right, everybody, we made it. We've made it. How have you enjoyed today so far? Good? Okay, awesome. I'm glad to hear that. We love all your feedback. It really helps us plan for next year. On the back of your agendas, there's a post-conference survey. Anything you'd like to share, add, say. We're always open for it, and we have paper copies if you prefer a paper copy as well. Quick note as well, if you did sign up for CEUs, make sure that you do sign out and get somebody to sign, myself or one of my board members, to sign your paper as well, so we can make sure to get that authorized for you. And here we are. All right, so we have Brooke Schaefer. Brooke is the founder and CEO of Pendleton Collaborative, a healthcare innovation group focused on the well-being of patients and staff. She is the director of perinatal substance use disorders for Community Health Network and oversees Choice, a program supporting mothers with substance use disorders. Based in central Indiana, Brooke, a nurse practitioner with an MBA, enjoys a chaotic farm life with her husband, 4 kids, and an array of animals. Despite her years of effort, she humbly admits her CrossFit skills are a work in progress, excelling only at the occasional deadlift. I think we can all feel that. Quick note, I learned about Choice a few years ago, had always admired the work they were doing at Indy. So again, it's just an honor to have Brooke joining us and sharing about the program. Thank you.
All right, let's see here. I'm gonna push the wrong button at least once. There we go. All right, guys, so this is my crew. My husband, everybody feels sorry for that man for at least 1 minute because he really tolerates a lot. My 2 oldest daughters, who are 26 and 20, and then my sons, who are 16 and 12. My 16-year-old got his license yesterday. So do not drive in Pendleton, Indiana for a little bit. Bless him. Okay. I will say that I was really inspired today. I have never spoken about this publicly. I've written about it once, but it's not something I've ever spoken about hardly to anyone in my life. But today I was really inspired. When my 16-year-old son was born, my husband said, "I have had enough children, thank you so much, I would like to be done." So he had a vasectomy. And 2 years later, I talked him into getting a reversal. Again, that's why we should all take a minute to just think about poor Josh. But the reversal is a very interesting procedure. If anyone, it's like a complete fillet and reestablish, like it's bad news. And this guy did it. He didn't know how it was gonna go beforehand, bless him. So anyway, immediately after his, I'm gonna take this off. Immediately after his reversal, we went on a cruise and we brought home a pregnancy. We were super excited. I mean, it was almost immediate, right? And I'm like, oh my God, this kid is gonna be the best kid ever. And then my older 3 were all on break from school. And we went in for my 18-week OB check, and there was no heartbeat on that baby. And I just was like, no, there's a heartbeat. You're just not looking right. And I was a nurse at the time, and I was like, give me the Doppler. And the OB's like, okay. She hands it to me, and there was no heartbeat. That baby had died. We had to go into the hospital that night and deliver that baby. That was a super horrible, traumatic, terrible delivery. A resident delivered me. I had a huge blood clot pass, which they thought was my placenta, which if you're a nurse, you know that a placenta looks very different than a blood clot. But I was not feeling well at the time. And my husband was in a state of just horror at this point because I had actually caught the baby in the air. Like I'd stood up from the bed and been like, oh, and reached down and caught the baby as it was delivering. It was a disaster. I almost ended up in hysterectomy because I was bleeding so badly because my placenta had not delivered. And right as I was like starting to get real fuzzy, like was starting to just kind of leave the room from blood loss, my OB walks in, and my husband saw her before I did, and he looked, I couldn't see what he was looking at. He just looked, and he goes, oh, thank God. And I was like, is this real, or is this just part of my journey? And she managed to save my future fertility. Thank God she showed up when she did. She then went on to allow my husband to actually deliver our 12-year-old, Quinn. So I said to her, hey, can he deliver the baby? We're in the hospital. And she's like, sure. And that's pretty rare in the hospital for the OB to just be like, oh, I'll just stand here and watch. And my husband delivered him. I breastfed that kid for 18 months. He loved his father from the second he was born. I said that they, like baby ducks, will bond to the first thing they see. They'll pair to it. That kid, my husband was the first thing he saw, and my husband and that kid are like, poof, pair bonded forever, which is great, but also like, what up? I breastfed him for 18 months. He would like breastfeed and like stare at his dad the whole time. What? So anyway, my little guy, you can't tell, he has a really long mullet, and he plays rugby. He's like all the things. So anyway, that kid, he's hilarious. But when I was a little girl, I wanted to have Charlotte's Web be my house, the farm on Charlotte's Web. So I don't have a goose yet, but I'm working on that, coming soon. The rest of the herd you can see is all there in their beauty. My pony and my dog are the same size. That's true. So anyway, it's a good, fun place. If you're ever in Pendleton, come visit. I do have fluffy chickens, and it's always a good time. But the tale of that baby's loss, that baby's name was Zach. I have not said that out loud, I think, ever. That baby's loss was the greatest trauma I experienced in my life up to that point. I was very blessed to have you heard of ACE scores? Has anyone heard of ACE scores? Those are your adverse childhood experiences, events that happen to you prior to your 18th birthday. You have no impact on whether those things happen to you or not. I have an ACE score of 0. So my parents were that loving, nurturing. I had a household that was very secure and safe. When that baby died, I went to a really dark place. I just went home from the hospital, and I'm a talker. I'm rainbows and butterflies. I want to make new things all the time and get chickens and do all the crazy stuff. I spent a whole year so tired that I could barely function in my life. And I remember taking the girl that's holding the white dog and my son in the orange shirt, the curly-headed guy, to Walmart one time, and I was just letting them run up and down the aisles. And I was too tired to stop them, but I knew they needed to run, but I couldn't take them to the park because that was too much interaction. And I remember the guy at Walmart, the person who worked there, yelled at him and was like, "Where's your mother? What are you doing? Why isn't anyone taking care of you?" And I remember being like, I don't know. Like, my reaction was so like, yeah, you're right, I should do better. And we just walked out. In that year, I sought no help. My poor husband was just like, I don't know what's happening. Like, he didn't know how to help. He wasn't prepared for that. He hadn't met this person. None of us knew this person. And that dark, fuzzy cloud just was there the whole year. I could just barely function. So I decided in that year to go work in the ER as a nurse. I was a NICU nurse prior to that. And I went to work in the ER because I thought it would be so hard that I wouldn't even notice I was pregnant with the next one. And that was true. It was so hard, but it was so great. I learned a lot. And when that little Quinn was born, loving his father, everything started to get better. And then things started to fall into place. But I was really thinking today on all the things I've heard about how reaching out to people and just saying, "Are you okay?" Nobody asked me if I was okay in that whole year. I came from a family where everything was awesome all the time. And you did not talk about anything that isn't awesome. And that nobody ever just said, like, "Are you okay?" They were just like, "You're doing better, right? You're doing better. Everything's getting better. You're having another baby. It's going to be fine." Quinn, my youngest, doesn't replace Zach. So I really have been touched today by the stories and really inspired to kind of process that journey, which I have sort of just pushed aside. So thank you for helping me think about Zach today. Okay, now let's talk about what I'm really here to talk to you about. Not my own personal therapy session, but thank you all for being part of that. I am going to talk to you guys about substance use disorders and women, and that is my primary focus. The work that I run is a program called Choice. Choice is a treatment program for mothers. Mothers identify themselves as mothers. So if you identify yourself as a mother, you're a mother. Are you currently parenting your children? No. Do you have any living children? No. Whatever. As long as you identify yourself as a mother, you qualify for our services. That's one of the big things about our program is people always want to send me referral forms. I don't care. Just get them here. I don't need the deets. We'll get them here. We'll get them treatment. We'll get them started. We'll get them set. Because all these referrals take so long to go through, and you got to fax them or email them or send them here. What's her insurance? I don't care. So we have a thing in Choice that we do where we just go like this. That just means just get her in the door. So if somebody's on the phone and they're like, they want to know if you have room on Wednesday. We'll figure it out. Just get them in the door. So we're going to talk about that a lot today, about how we can change the way we provide services to these patients to make it so that they can choose recovery whenever they're ready to choose it. Finishing this slide deck is not the most important thing we're going to do today. So sometimes people feel a lot of pressure, like, I got 2 more slides, I'm going to rush through these. I don't care. Like, I'm a long talker. We might not make it through the slide deck. If y'all want to hang out and talk after, I'm here. But the slide deck is not the most important. I have 4 kids. I'm very used to being interrupted. So I swear every time, still, I mean, my oldest is 26, but like you go to the bathroom, you sit down, you see toes under the door, because everybody got to talk to you when you're captive. You feel me, I can tell. You've had toes under the door. Right, so I'm very used to being interrupted. Please just raise your hand, interrupt, give me a wave, we'll stop. Be ready for a tangent. We already went on a big one. I didn't know I was going to talk about Zach today. So we're going to have some tangents. Usually the best education and conversations happen on a tangent. You read the room, you feel what's happening, and people say, hey, we want to talk about this, and we go on that journey. So I'm here to talk to you about what I know, but I'm also here to hear what you have to say. All right, real quick, substance use disorder stats. It's bad, guys. It's getting worse. That's what this says. Okay, this is not getting better. Right before COVID broke, I was on this meeting, literally 2 weeks before. I was on this meeting and I said in my mind, because I'm not crazy enough to say it out loud, I think we're starting to get somewhere with this. I think we're starting to make impacts that are making a difference. I'm starting to see the severity of how sick the patients are that I'm caring for. They seem to be getting a little better. And then I went to Disney World with my family, and then 2 days later, COVID broke. We were literally flying home like, what's going to happen, you know? COVID broke, and it really threw major impacts into the treatment for substance use disorders. There's a couple factors that changed in that time. Big thing I want you to take from this slide is it's bad. I hope you guys already know that. Like, that should not be news to you, but substance use disorder is absolutely decimating our country. And it doesn't just come down to, like, it's them. It's all of us. It could be one of my daughters. It could absolutely be my sister. It could be anyone. Even us kids that had our little ACE scores of 0 are not immune to this. One of my very best friends that I grew up with, I'm not going to use her name, she struggled mightily with this. And this was a person who also had an ACE score of 0. Like, she just liked the way it made her feel. I had a patient one time tell me that opiates help them see in color. I had to think about that for a minute, because that took me back to the time when Zach died and that year after he died, and I thought, everything's just gray. There's like no color in the world during that year. And when she said, it makes me see in color, I was like, I know exactly what you mean. It makes everything like bright. Holy crap, that was really powerful. Everything I've really learned about substance use disorder, I've really learned from my patients. I can read all the medical stuff and get all the degrees and all the certifications and all the shenanigans. My husband teases me about it all the time. He's like, how many letters are after your name now? Like, I don't know, like 14. But, for Josh. But it's really about the things my patients have taught me about these substances. So you heard our last speaker, she spoke about fentanyl, and she hit it exactly right. Fentanyl is out of control right now. Heroin is not heroin right now, it's fentanyl. So people will call it heroin. They'll say, I use heroin. But when you drug screen them, they're negative for heroin. And when that first started happening to me in the hospitals, when patients would come in to seek care, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. You're going through withdrawal. You're negative for all opiates on drug screen. What is happening? And finally, my patient taught me, oh, hey, it's fentanyl. This was years ago when we first started seeing fentanyl. She said, you won't find it on a drug screen. The methadone treatment centers don't test us for fentanyl. It never comes up positive. What? She goes, call your lab and ask them. I call lab, and they're like, oh, yeah, there's a new synthetic fentanyl on the streets that isn't showing up even when you test for opiates. So patients' drug screens show no substances, but they're visibly withdrawing from an opiate of some kind. That's how we learned about fentanyl. This fentanyl is not the fentanyl that you may have received in the hospital. This is a totally different grade of fentanyl. It's synthetically made, generally manufactured in China, and the concentrations, you might hear people say like it's 500 times stronger than pharmaceutical grade fentanyl. They don't know, because every bag of fentanyl has a different concentration. So you might get this from this dealer this week, and it's this strong. You might get the exact same amount the next week, and it's 3 times stronger. That's why people are dying of overdoses so significantly from this, because there's no way to tell what the concentration is. Fentanyl is evil. What fentanyl is doing to people is unbelievable, and the withdrawal, Who has seen someone have opiate withdrawal from fentanyl specifically? Has anybody seen what that looks like? It's totally different. Like, I never thought I would say the words, I miss black tar heroin, but black tar heroin, people withdrew in a way that was less violent than fentanyl. It's impossible. And think about that while you're pregnant. You already feel like crap when you're pregnant usually anyway. Most people, some people I know, they just like skip through their pregnancy all happy and perfect. That's very nice for you. Most of us feel like crap when we're pregnant. And then you throw in opiate withdrawal from that, it's unbearable. So we've worked out all kinds of protocols, procedures. I'm not here today to talk to you specifically about Choice, but definitely, if you ever want that information, I'm happy to share it. Nothing we do at Choice is a secret. Everything is to share. I don't want to market it. We can't make money off the backs of substance use disorder. We have to share everything we know with each other. So if you ever want those protocols, I'll share them. But fentanyl is killing people like crazy. The significance of this, it's increased so much in its popularity in the United States. Look at this. I mean, that's exponential growth. So the other substances are holding pretty steady as far as their overdose rates within the United States, but fentanyl overdoses are just exploding. People are just dying left and right. I want to talk to you guys. This is something I talk to my kids about all the time. I would highly recommend you talk to your loved ones or the people you care for about it. I kept getting patients in who said, I'm taking Roxy. And I'm like, your drug screen has determined that is not true. And they're like, no, it's Roxy. Look at it. And they're showing me the pills. And I'm like, okay, it looks like Roxy. I don't know if it tastes like Roxy, but I believe you. But the problem would be, it's not Roxy. So here, for example, is a One Pill Can Kill campaign that's going on right now with the DEA, and it has to do with what is called pressed pills. Has anybody heard of pressed pills or had any encounters with pressed pills in treatment? So it looks exactly like the pharmaceutical grade pill. Roxy is the one I come across the most. Patients will swear, I'm not taking fentanyl. I'm not using, I just take some Roxys. Well, your fentanyl level is unmeasurable and you don't have any Roxy according to your drug screen. Because what happened is these drug cartels are taking 3D printers and making pill presses that then make pressed fentanyl into a pill that looks exactly like the pharmaceutical grade pill. So I have somebody say, I took a bar of Xanax. Well, it was actually a bar of fentanyl. There's no visible difference. Now, these two are different colors, but you'll see others that are even closer. Look at the Adderall. This is killing college kids. They're trying to have some Adderall to get through finals week, which I'm not approving, but it's a little bit different to take an Adderall than it is to take a fentanyl pill that you've never touched an opiate before, and you take one fentanyl, which you think is Adderall, that'll kill you. So you're seeing this One Pill Can Kill campaign. It's really serious, and again, I talk to my kids about it all the time. Like, ain't no playing around. You cannot take an Adderall that you think is your blah, blah, blah friend's Adderall, your friend's grandma, blah, blah. No. You're not taking anything that you don't know, that you didn't get from a pharmacy. So, Oxy, and those one pill kills, they're really serious business. That's something, too, I talk to my patients about. They'll say, I always get this, I always get this one. I have a rule about patients that I don't argue, okay? So, like, if you tell me something, we both know it's not true, okay? And I just look at you and go, okay, well, somehow methamphetamine, cocaine, codeine, fentanyl, and all these other things got in your system. I don't know how. And they're like, I don't know either. And I'm like, okay. So how do we help you live a life where these substances are not mysteriously finding their way into your life? Because I don't argue about it, right? There's no point in being like, I know you're lying. Your drug screen says you're a liar. Where's that going to go? What is the rapport that's built in that conversation? None. We just get in a fight. I'm not there for that. I'm there to be helpful. So we talked a little bit earlier about COVID and overdose rates and what those are doing to people. You can see again that when COVID broke, fentanyl began being mass-produced at almost exactly the same time. Oh, crap. So we got the worst opiate we've ever dealt with on the market at the same time that we isolated people from the treatment programs that were keeping them alive. During that time, you saw people overdose and die who had been in long-term recovery, but were being isolated from the services that were in place to help them. They took away AA, NA meetings in person, all those things, therapy in person, all these things shut down. The Choice program was the first program at Community Health Network in Indianapolis to go face-to-face again because I couldn't take it. First of all, I was working out of my pantry and was about to lose my mind. But second of all, I needed to see them face to face. We needed to look at each other because they needed to know I care about them, and I needed to see their faces to know how they were really doing. And these virtual appointments were a mess for us. We did it because we had to, but we were the first ones to be back in the office because of this. We cannot, and we didn't have this data when all that was happening, but you could just tell. I mean, whoever was working recovery at those times, you knew this is bad. You can't isolate people who are seeking recovery from the services that are helping them find recovery. This isn't gonna go well. So, what can we do? How do we get better at this? Because that's something I've really struggled with. We have to constantly, at Choice, our rule is we are ever changing. We are never stagnant. So we'd never say the phrase, well, that's how we've always done it. I was taught as a nurse way back in baby nurse school when I was just a little Brooke that you had to always be questioning the why. That's something they teach you in nursing school. You need to know the why. You should never give a medication without knowing why. Critical thinking, right? That's a big thing in nursing school. And so that's something that we've taken into Choice in the way of we always are saying to each other, well, why do we do that? Is that still the best way to do that? We have to be constantly changing. So even if you have a program right now that you're like, yeah, things are working, we're good. No, you gotta keep growing, you gotta keep moving. There's never any just stop. So one of the things that we came up with is we don't discharge patients short of violence or theft. And even the theft one was the person whose cell phone was stolen by a patient said, oh, maybe we should just try again. And I said, okay. But then our office manager got involved and said no. So we don't discharge people for actively using. We gotta think about that for a minute. A lot of substance use disorder programs have a policy that if you are relapsed, if you're actively using, you're discharged from the program. Hold on, say that out loud. That doesn't make any sense. So later I have a slide that says, if you say it out loud and it sounds stupid, it is stupid, don't do that. That's our motto in Choice. Like, say it out loud. Sounds stupid. Okay, let's do something else, right? And my staff, man, they will catch me on that one. they'll be like, Brooke, say that out loud. I'm like, oh, crap. Okay, we gotta think of a different solution. But discharging people from treatment for substance use disorders because they're using substances makes no sense. Oh, you just showed us that you're actually even more ill with your substance use disorder than we thought. Therefore, we're just gonna kick you out and like try not to die. Is the strategy? That's a terrible idea. So if people relapse, that means they need more help from us, not less. And that's one of the things we have to change about the way we're giving care. The other thing, and this one makes, most of you guys are social workers, I think, but this one makes the medical community have a heart attack. I don't care if you're late, you can be 3 days late. As long as the office doors are open, we're gonna work you in. We're not gonna make other patients late because you're 3 days late, but we will work you in. If we have to skip a lunch or whatever, we're gonna get you worked in. Because being late or no-showing, we cannot track no-shows with patients who are actively using substances. If they made it to the office at all, that's a real big deal. Let's just start there. So a lot of there's an LPN that runs me who helps like put patients, she does a lot of things with our program, but one of the things she does is she rooms patients. So when they come in, she puts them in a room and then I go in as the provider and see them. And she'll always be like, well, she was 30 minutes late. And I'm like, hey, that's like 3 hours earlier than the one we saw before. I'm like, whatever, you know? And she thinks it's so funny to just kind of mess with me, like, how late is too late? And I'm like, if the lights are off and the doors are locked, that's too late. Because I can't make everybody stay late just because I'm willing to, right? We can't make the whole office stay late just because I said it's okay. But if the lights are on, come in. Was your appointment 2 weeks ago? Whatever, let's start now. Tracking no-shows for patients has long-term ramifications for them. So when I get in a chart, I can see how many no-shows. One of the very first things it shows me as a provider is how many no-shows you've had. And it's like this circle. It'll show me like a green section and then a red section. So if you've had like 60%, it gives me a percentage. And there are certain medical specialists who will not see patients who have a certain amount of no-shows. So like if you have a 25% no-show rate, it's actually 15% for some of the specialists, they won't see you. Because if they don't see a patient in that time slot, they don't get paid. So they're not gonna take the risk of giving you an appointment. We are talking about humans, not like, you know, a car dealership. What are you talking about? We have to see them. That's what we're there to do, whether they're gonna no-show or not. I had one patient who had no-showed me 8 times before for a 1-hour appointment, a new patient appointment, 1-hour appointment, she no-showed me 8 times. And the staff was like, how far are we gonna go with this? And I said, as long as she keeps calling and making an appointment, that means she's thinking about it. She's at least considering the possibility. So if she shows or not, we're gonna just keep giving her an appointment. And then the OBGYNs in the office were making fun of me, like, what do you think? Is it 12? Is it 15? I'm like, I don't care if it's 100, let's do this. We'll go to the ends of time. She did eventually show up. She went into detox. She did very well. We helped her. She was sober when she delivered her baby. Like, she just needed 8 no-shows to make that happen. And if we had a limit, and there are offices that carry a limit, 4 no-shows, 3 no-shows, whatever, then she wouldn't have made it to care, and then where would she have gone? What would have happened to her? All right, so again, we only discharge patients from our programming at the greatest extremes: violence or threat of violence. Now, I have definitely had patients say, I am gonna kick your ass for calling DCS. And I'm like, fair enough, I get it, you're mad. I'm gonna let that one go. And sometimes maybe I'm not supposed to, but I don't care. But if they say, like, when I get in there, I'm gonna kick her. The front desk lady was threatened one time by a patient, and I was like, absolutely not, she's not allowed in this building. We can't have that. That's unacceptable. So threat of violence, unacceptable. But short of that, we've got to be flexible. We're caring for people who are not at the greatest moment of what's going on for them. Some of my patients come into treatment, and they've been sober for years, they just are pregnant, and they wanna be with a clinic that they know understands substance use disorder during pregnancy. And those patients, great. Some of my patients literally use in the parking lot and then walk into our lobby, lay down on the ground, and we're like, are you okay? So it's any extreme of use that is coming into our office. And we're ready for that any point, any time. We have to be flexible about the care we provide to these patients. Okay, this one's driving me crazy right now. This one-size-fits-all model of care is not appropriate. There are many people, I'm not asking for a show of hands, there are many people in this room who are in recovery, and every one of you had a different journey to get where you are today. Good for you. That's hard work. But you didn't all do it the same. So when we start treatment programs and we say to people, okay, you have to do it my way. I'm the nurse practitioner, I'm the boss, I'm the director of this program, I am the queen of this program. No, that attitude is horrible. It hurts people. We really have to think about that. We have to have individualized plans of care. We have to be unique on how we provide services because we're dealing with individuals. So we can't say to people, you do it my way or you get out. There can be rules, okay? I'm not talking about pure chaos. I have 4 kids and all 4 kids needed different rules. Slightly, but they were different. But they all had the same rule of, you can't show blatant disrespect. You can't lie. But do I let my 16-year-old play more video games than the others? Yeah, I do. He needs to de-escalate his brain in a different way than some of them. So there are different variations within safety parameters, but patients need unique individual recovery. Every recovery system has to be slightly altered. You can't say to a patient, we require you to go to 12-step. Everybody has to go to 12-step. What if that's the worst plan for them? What if they would do way better with a different kind of therapy, a different kind of intervention? We cannot require these absolutely rigid with no gray area rules. What worked for you, your son, your neighbor, isn't gonna work for everybody else. Uniqueness, and we really do that. I'm not just talking about it. It sounds complex, but I'm telling you, every patient that comes into Choice gets an individualized plan of care that makes sense for them because they're all on a different journey. All right. We have to stop fighting in the lifeboat. Somebody said this to me once, and I wish I could remember her name. She was so cool. And she had gotten in an argument with a person who worked for Choice, who had called this rehab facility and was asking for something that she couldn't have, and they got into it. And I went to apologize for the passions of the team and just say, hey, we're here to be on this, we're all on the same team. And this lady kept saying to me, yeah, there's no fighting in the lifeboat. And I was like, oh, that's so true. We are all fighting to help these people find recovery. We can't fight with each other. There's no space for that. There's certainly no room for territory. And that is really something that we live at Choice. I don't care where they get their OB care from. I don't care. We'll do anything. We call it a la carte. So maybe she gets her OB care here, and she's getting her medications there, but she's getting her therapy with our therapist. Cool. Could she get all those things from us? Yes. But she doesn't want to do it that way. And I always tell my patients, literally, I walk in the room and I always go, listen, you're the boss of you. I'm just going to tell you some things I know, and I'm going to talk to you about some advice I have. You don't have to listen to me, and you know your life way better than I do. And they're always like, oh, okay, she seems crazy, but she's at least listening, right? And that's just a good start to our journey. I can't tell you how much you just see their shoulders relax when I'm not like, you have to do group, and you have to do individual, and you have to take this medicine, and you have to show up at this time. And they're like, oh, they like a little more freedom to control, because we don't know what's going on in their home. We're not living with them. But this fighting in the lifeboat, that's about us fighting with each other. And we can't do that. There's no space for that. We at Choice cannot fight with the recovery residency. Whether we agree with everything they're doing or not, we can't fight with them. We have to be the constant peacekeepers. In our team, we always say, listen, I always say, if I could get along with my husband's ex-wife and never got in a fight with her one single time, I can get along with anybody, right? Like she and I, we worked great together. We were really good together. We never fought. There was no fighting in that lifeboat. And man, sometimes you gotta dig deep for that no fighting in the lifeboat. We have to stop the stigma when it comes to medications. This one's making me crazy, and I really need help with this. We cannot give medical advice if we are not medically trained. And so that's a great point to say, like, hey, let's reach out to your medical prescriber and ask them why they kicked up your Seroquel to a dose that would sedate Brooks' pony. Like, what's the point of a Seroquel dose that high? Is there a reason behind it? Let's talk about it. It doesn't mean you're saying everything that the medical community does is right. That's not what I'm asking you for. I'm saying include the medical provider in the conversation. If a client comes to you and says, when I take my Suboxone, I feel really sedated. I feel like I'm falling asleep all the time. I don't like how it makes me feel. I'm thinking about cold turkey detoxing off it. That would be a moment to say, let's bring in your medical team and talk about it all together. Because a cold turkey Suboxone detox, it can be done. People can do hard things, but it's not pleasant. And it doesn't equal long-term outcomes that are recovery-based. So people have a lot of feelings about MAT, which we're now calling MOUD. You guys heard this? So we used to say MAT, medically assisted treatment, and now we say MOUD, medicine for opiate use disorder. Subtle difference, but it just means one was saying like medically assisted treatment meant like you could also use medicine. And now we're saying this is the medicine to treat opiate use disorder. Slight difference, but I've seen Suboxone and Subutex save lives. I'm not saying it's right for everybody. I'm not saying it's a solution, because everyone needs an individualized recovery plan, right? But the data supports that these people live longer. And what's the worst thing, this is what I'm always thinking about, what's the worst thing that could happen to this baby if their mother dies? So her life is more likely to be extended if she's utilizing Subutex or Suboxone during pregnancy. We need to talk about that really seriously with her. But then when someone else comes to her, her pharmacist starts to be nasty with her in the pharmacy about the medicine, you know your baby's gonna be born an addict. That's a quote that one of the pharmacists said to the patient. She calls me crying, you're making my baby an addict. I said, whoa, first, babies cannot be addicts, because babies cannot be addicted. Babies can be dependent on a substance, but addiction is defined as the use of substances regardless of harm and consequences. Babies, by their beautiful little baby nature, cannot do that. They're cognitively unable to use anything regardless of harm and consequences. So a baby can be physically dependent on a medication, but they can't be addicted to it. So the pharmacist tells her this, she calls me crying, we talk about it, we figure out a solution. What if she hadn't called me? What if she had just said, forget it, I'm just gonna not get my medicine, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna cold turkey detox, and I'm just gonna go with the try not to die strategy of recovery. Crap, that could have gone real bad. She could have been one more of those statistics. So again, I'm not saying medicine is for everybody. It's not for everybody. There's a lot of people who have done recovery with abstinence only. That's awesome. But medication can help a lot of people. So we need to be open-minded to what solutions are out there, even if we have our own biases about that. Even if we say, well, I did it with nothing. I'm glad that that worked for you. It doesn't work for most people. We got to think about what's going to work for those patients. All right, guys, here's my motto. If you say it out loud and it sounds stupid, it is stupid. Don't do that. Please plagiarize this. Use it all the time. Get it tattooed on you. Send me a picture. Tag me on Instagram, whatever. Because I say this all the time. I actually say it to my children too. Hold on, say that out loud. And they're like, I'm gonna do this. And I'm like, what do you think about that? It's probably not a good idea. So, but we really have to keep this in mind with our patients. I had a patient one time that we had sent her to maternal fetal medicine, so that's the high-risk OBGYNs. Her baby had a syndrome that needed, the baby she was pregnant with had a syndrome that she needed to go to these advanced OBGYNs. She goes to them. They tell her that she needs to go to Riley in downtown Indianapolis to get a fetal MRI. So that's where they give an MRI of the mother, and they look at the baby with that MRI, okay? Okay. She's wearing an ankle bracelet because she's on home detention. Do you see the problem? You can't get an MRI with an ankle bracelet on. So she won't do it, but she won't tell him why. She doesn't want to explain the whole situation to him. Finally, they call us and say, hey, your choice patient, she's non-compliant. Oh, I don't like that word, non-compliant. Why do they have to comply? Am I the boss? No. Right? So how about we say she's choosing not to follow my recommendations? That's totally different than saying she's disobedient, she's non-compliant. Okay, Dad. Like, no. So, we called her parole officer. We got him to give her 1 day pass to have that removed. We had to go with her to get it removed. Then we had to drive her, because she had no transportation, also no working cell phone. We had to drive her to Riley, get the fetal MRI, then we took her out to lunch, and then we took her back and got the bracelet put back on and took her back home. She wasn't being non-compliant. She had a barrier that she wasn't willing to divulge to the maternal fetal medicine doctors because she doesn't have to, right? She's not required to completely fillet open her life to them. She just wouldn't do what they were telling her to do. But they didn't really check as to why. And she wouldn't have told them if they'd asked because she wasn't ready to tell them all that. This one's big to me. You have to stop the stigma in the waiting room. So choice is embedded within the OBGYN practices that we serve. You will never see our name on any of our marketing except the marketing that we ourselves carry. So the door that you walk in to receive our services is the same door that any other woman who is seeking OBGYN services at Community East or Community Anderson is going to walk in. Nobody knows why you're in that lobby. Your mom doesn't know. Your significant other might not know. It's your decision who you tell these things to. I'm not going to out you that you have a substance use disorder and that you're pregnant simply by the label on the van that picks you up. We're not doing that. So the Choice program has a van. It's branded like it's a Community Health Network van. It's not branded with Choice because that's your information. You get to decide who knows that. And the stigma of the waiting room is big. My patients talk to me about that all the time. They'll say, I can't go back to so-and-so place because that lobby is just full of people who are, they'll use a different word than I'm going to use, seeking recovery, and I don't want to be in a room with all those people and all of us know each other's business. I get that a lot, especially in small towns like Anderson, Indiana. They're like, everybody I know is there. I went to high school with all those people. I don't want them to know. There's too much information for them just being in that lobby. Whereas if you run into them in the OBGYN lobby, it's a little different. Could be there for anything. We have to start, this is big to me, and we talk about this in Choice all the time. You have to be nice even when you don't feel like it, especially as a provider. I really think when I'm having a bad day, my kids have called me 16 times to ask me where the bread is. That's like my biggest, why do they do that so much? I put my phone on airplane because I promise they will call while I'm up here to say, we don't have any bread. And I'll be like, you're 16, go buy some. And I'll be like, can I use your Apple Card? Damn it. Fine, just stop calling me. But I really am serious about before I go in a room, regardless of what happened that morning, I'm gonna go in that room, I'm gonna be right. Like I'm gonna listen to Eye of the Tiger, I'm gonna get serious, I'm gonna be focused. I'm gonna walk in and give them my A game every day, whether I feel it 100% or not, because they deserve that discipline from me. And so as a provider, you have to be on your A game. And especially when you're providing social services of any kind, you have got to be on your A game. You just don't get a bad day. Flexibility, absolutely critical. You've got to be flexible with these patients. Cannot put all these you're 15 minutes late, I'm not going to see you. Why? You sure taught them a good lesson. Try not to die before we can see you back in a week. Wow, that's not a good lesson. We have to offer good options. We talk about this a lot. You've got to have 2 doors the patient can choose to walk through. One leads to continued substance use and not regaining custody of their kids. The other one is easier to walk through. The door's open. I'm standing there with it open. And you could walk through that one instead. That's going to lead to recovery. That's how those options have to be presented. You can continue to use, absolutely, or we can make it even easier for you to seek recovery. One thing that I really hope that all of you, if you hear, like if you've nodded out for some, no, not out, if you've fallen asleep for a second, please join me for 1 minute. Please get online and get a dose of Narcan. If you don't currently carry Narcan, everybody in my house over the age of 13 carries Narcan. I have one in my bag right there. Always carry Narcan. You never know when you're going to see somebody go down and you get the opportunity to save their life. I will warn you, if you give someone Narcan, please give them the Narcan, one squirt of Narcan up their nose, and just take a step back, because people often wake up really afraid. It can make them feel really aggressive or afraid. So just give them a little space if you do use Narcan. We have to refine the systems that we're providing care to these patients. Patients are dying at record levels, but we can do something about it. This is something we can really make an impact on. This isn't like, oh, heart disease, and it's so complicated. We've got to do all these things to fix heart disease. No, opiate use disorder, we are right at the front lines of being able to do something to help these patients. And a lot of it just has to do with the willingness to hear what they're saying to us, to being accessible to them even when it's inconvenient for us. So remodeling those systems of care, that doesn't take money, it doesn't take grants, it doesn't take shenanigans, it just takes presence. Where are we on time? We're at time. One last thing, guys, I want to say, everything that people hear about choice, they're always like, that's real cute, but how do you pay for it? There's always a way. There's always a way. The last speaker was talking about all the cool creative funding that she's figured out. Like, there is always a solution. You just have to be tenacious. I used to have a Jack Russell Terrier. She had a tennis ball, and if that went under the couch, she was 10 pounds. She would move the entire couch to get that ball. And I was like, that's my girl. She's so tenacious, you know? That's how you have to be about funding. You just have to keep getting told no 100 times until somebody tells you yes. There's always funding. There's always a way. Grants are not as complicated as they try to make them sound like. Okay, some of them are, but most of them aren't that complicated. There's always a solution. All right, I've got a slide for questions. And then also, guys, I wanted to make sure that you had, these are some books. I would take a picture of this slide if you're a reader. I love all these books. A lot of them have to do with substance use disorders, specifically I've listened to all of them on Audible multiple times, but I would highly recommend The Heroin Diaries by Nikki Sixx, that you buy a paper copy of that one, because it's kind of a journal environment, and he really does this really cool job of walking you through his substance use disorder. He used to shoot up Jack Daniels in his vein when he would run out of heroin, and he really makes you understand why he thought that was okay. And that's just, he taught me a lot. So these are some books I highly recommend. I think we are at time here, and I will definitely be staying after if you guys have any questions for me.
All right, guys. Well, we made it. I can't believe it. We made it through the whole day. So I truly am so grateful for you guys being here and being a part of this. And I hope that you got something out of it that you can take into your practice or your family or your friends or whatever you do. The next mom you meet, ask her how she's doing. How are you really doing? And just go out into our community and keep planting seeds and change the conversation surrounding maternal mental health and substance use disorder. Thank you so much.